right, so we're back with another Deep Images, and tonight we're going to talk about post-apocalyptic cinema. Um, Real quick, I'm going to just name off who's with us on the panel. Just wave, I guess, which will help everybody. So we've got Keith Howell,
Well, my
and
hands.
then we have yes, and wave and say hi if you want. And we've got Bill Mulligan and Scott. Andrew Hutchins is back with us. Justin Cotton and Kaelyn Ireland, our newest cast member. So anyway, we're going to talk about the post-apocalyptic cinema tonight, and the big thing is for me first getting into this is defining it as opposed to apocalyptic cinema and as opposed to dystopian, because there's overlaps. So after doing some reading and some thinking, what I've come up with is like the post-apocalyptic movie has to show the world after an apocalypse. It doesn't matter if it involves time travel or not, as long as you see the world after the apocalypse has happened. So an apocalypse would be some, you know, inciting event, to be literary about it. And, it could be a nuclear bomb, it could be a plague, it could be a natural disaster, it could be aliens wrecking the planet, leaving, whatever. It could be a natural revolt or something that changed the whole world order. But then you're leaning toward dystopian. So to me, dystopian is a bleak future that grows into that future. It's not like one giant inciting event made it happen. So like Soylent Green is obviously a dystopian film. They haven't dropped a bomb in it. Not that I remember anyway.
No.
And Blade
No.
Runner, if you choose to look at that as a dystopia, that would be like that also. And then post-apocalyptic is where we want to go. There are movies that are apocalyptic. They show the lead up to it. My best way of going through it is going through the Romero series. So Night of the Living Dead is an apocalyptic film. So then Dawn of the Dead is apocalyptic. Yeah, it's apocalyptic, yes. And then Day of the Dead is obviously post-apocalyptic and dystopian. And
Land of the Dead is also definitely that too.
Land of the Dead is very dystopian, because then you've had a new order trying to create a new civilization. And failing miserably, and then on from there. But yeah, so that's kind of how that works. So we're going to do the films that happen after an apocalypse, and of course a lot of them are going to be nuclear war, because that's been a looming thing most of our lives, and is right at this moment. So Justin Cotton, can you discuss a series that you enjoy that has that as one of the major conceits?
Oh, well, I can talk about the original. I can talk about the original Planet of the Apes series. So the first film was 1968, before I was born, but I remember seeing it when I was about 10 years or 11 years old in the 1980s. And what scared me was the scene when I first started watching the film. It was the scene where the apes first appear on horseback, trying to catch the humans who are farming for.
Are you frozen?
And the film sort of drew me in at that moment. And it was on TV. I just watched it. I seem to recall there was also a TV series.
Yes, there was.
Yes, there was.
Yeah,
in the late 70s, which
I haven't gotten to see it, but I know it exists.
Mm-hmm.
I thought it's terrible, but I mean, I love Roddy McDowall in it. Then go ahead, Jeff.
Yeah, it was pretty poor, but I think it was, by the time it reached TV in New Zealand where I grew up, it was probably in the early 1980s when it was on TV, or about 1980. So yeah, I think the film, I saw it recently again at the Astor where I usually go, the Art Deco cinema. And I saw it probably about 2 months ago. Well, up very well. What I like about it is the opening scenes are in a sort of desert area near the Colorado River, I think. It looks as though they're on an alien planet. There's no one around when the spacecraft crashes. Charlton Heston sees the clock or the timer on the aircraft after they get out of the aircraft. And it seems to reveal they're 2,000 years in the future from when they departed. But there's no giveaway that they're actually on Earth at all, and they don't really, as you know, find that out till the end of the film. And then, of course, when they do come across the humans, they're mute, they can't speak. There's that great scene where the the apes on horseback come on through. And what I've found basically an antagonist in the film, effectively the film's villain, but he's a bit more complex than that, as it turns out, because he's the only ape that has knowledge of being an orangutan. He's
Dr.
supposed to be an
Zayas.
orangutan.
Yeah.
Dr. Zayas. There's orangutans, chimpanzees, which tend to be the friendlier sort, and of
They're
course
different classes.
the henchmen or the soldiers on horseback are the gorillas. But Dr. Zayas has knowledge of humans and what happened 2,000 years in their past, and what may become of their knowledge and technology. As it turns out, he's the only one aware of human history and tries to hide that from the rest of his people. So on a number of levels, it works really well, particularly right at the end with the twist when Charlton Heston and the woman are on a horseback and they ride up across the coastline and come across the remains of the Statue of Liberty. So there's effectively almost possibly a pro or anti-nuclear, I suppose, or
Yes.
supportive of the peace movement,
Mm-hmm.
closing lines in the film. So it holds up really well. I think it's from a novel by Pierre Boulle,
Yes.
who wrote
Excellent novel.
another great novel called Bridge on the River Kwai. It was also Pierre Boulle, a book I read when I was at high school, as part of our course. So it's a pretty good film. Unfortunately, the sequels I don't think held up as well. I've seen a couple of those, but not all of them. I think there was 3 sequels about 1970 to 1972.
Four.
Again,
Yeah, 4.
I think they hold up. I think they do
Beneath
hold
the
up.
Planet of the Apes as well.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that was pretty
a
scary
wild
and
one.
pretty hokey film, actually. But
Yeah, I think I agree with Henry. I think they do hold up, but that there is sort of a diminishing return.
Yeah.
They get
Yeah.
cheaper and cheaper with every film.
Yeah.
I think
Of
Caesar
course,
worked things
and
out.
all of them do have plot holes in them, so you got to
Yeah.
But they also have some brilliant points, like the time paradox, which
Yeah.
that runs through the series and progresses until you realize that Caesar has created the past
Right.
that led to what Taylor found.
Yeah.
But it's
Yeah.
different. He's changed
Yeah,
the timeline.
Conquest is
Yeah.
pretty
Battle of the
brilliant.
Planet of the Apes. He's in Battle of the Planet of the Apes. He's changed the timeline.
Mhm.
That's the weakest one, plausibility wise. I like it as a movie, but he could not have domesticated that many simians in one or two generations.
Right.
No.
Yeah. But
That's
you know,
the problem.
yeah,
one
but
generation.
regardless of that, Conquest is a pretty dark film.
I
Oh,
love
yeah.
it.
You know, for
That's
what
actually
it
my
is.
second favorite
you know.
one. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Very
and
political.
because I rewatch these pretty regularly. You know,
Me too.
I grew up in the Planet of the Apes generation, and so yeah, I like to watch the whole set start right through. And yeah, Conquest is really dark, and because of that, I think it stays effective even when it's very dated at the same time. I think it's
That was
still,
actually the first one I saw, which was interesting because it does take place in the timeline first.
yeah.
Takes place in 1991.
1991.
I do love Beneath the Planet of the Apes because they made a sequel with the full intention that this guarantees there will never be another sequel. Now, that didn't work.
Nixon did one of
Right.
these sequels.
Right. Well, tell people why that is. So what the inciting event that says there's no more sequels to make.
You know, it's one thing when you kill off the main character or something. They blow up the entire planet Earth. That's it. The guy, Paul Frees, comes on at the end and says, "There is a planet circling around the sun. It is now dead. Go home. We're not making any more of these."
That's like
It's
the
pretty
science
somber ending.
fiction equivalent of it's just a flesh wound.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so yeah, Escape from
Well,
the
it's like in the Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy where the planet supposedly blows up and you find out later on that it didn't
Yeah.
get blown up.
Yeah,
That's why I love Escape from the Planet of the Apes so much. I was a kid when that one came out. I had already seen the other two. I was like, oh, this was amazing, you know, for a kid at the time, you know, to have them do the reversal on us, you know, the little switcheroo and all of that, and then a lot of that satire of society and fame and all of that. I mean, I could see how that kind of a movie could also play now, You know,
Oh yeah,
more so.
That was my favorite part of that film, and it also comes straight out of the novel because a lot of those scenes are straight out of the novel.
That's right. I mean, it picked up threads that they had discarded originally.
Yeah, because Paul Dane was French too, and he loved bull.
Yeah.
I saw Escape from the Planet of the Apes at the drive-in. My parents took me there, and I remember watching it. And you get to the end, it's like, this is such a downbeat movie. What the hell? And then I'm like, oh, I forgot. I'm in the 70s. Yeah, so sure,
right.
Yeah, I had a film professor who was telling us how you can't. This was in the '90s, saying how Hollywood demands happy endings now, but in the 60s you had Spartacus where everybody gets crucified and people were flocking to it.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, that one at least they had to, that's what actually happened. But I mean, every vampire movie from the 1970s ends with the hero looking at the heroine and she comes at him with fangs. That's the ending of every vampire movie from the 1970s. One of the people that we were following is now a vampire. That's it.
Unless they were already vampires and you already knew they were vampires.
Yeah.
Right.
That's why you start getting into movies like Ganja and Hess, where there's no way you can really figure out the ending, and it doesn't follow any vampire rules. I love that, and it doesn't even use the word vampire. And there's actually several films like that.
That movie came from
quite
another
as
dimension.
good. I did. It's eerie, but we'll talk about that.
Yeah, I just saw that for the first time a few weeks ago.
I feel like we need to have a vampire episode now.
But also back on Planet of the Apes, the very first one, though, I think it really, one of the cool things about it is that you don't realize you're watching a post-apocalyptic movie until the end, unless you already know. And so that whole moment.
And if you'd read the book, you wouldn't know because they changed
exactly. And like Justin was recapping a little bit about the very end of that movie. For now everybody knows that, but with first generation of people, we didn't know that. So you're watching that, you don't realize you just think you're watching this sci-fi adventure, and then you get to that, and then it's like a
it is
like, holy cow, I've been watching a post-apocalyptic movie all this time.
Yep.
And Rod Serling wrote that.
Serling's major
Rod Serling, sure.
Yeah.
Him and Michael Wilson are the screenplay.
And hey, shout out to Charlton Heston. The guy gets a lot of flack. But and he wasn't the greatest actor. He didn't have a great range, but within that range, he could be great. There's no one else who could play this.
He's great in all of those movies, cautionary science fiction movies.
He's the only human, only thinking, talking human left on the planet, and he still talks shit to these apes. He still
he's
doesn't
great.
care. He's Charlton Heston.
Because George Taylor was a total nihilist. When you're young, you don't really get that out of the movie. You just think he's kind of cranky. But then when you get older and you really listen to the dialogue, you're like, damn.
Yeah.
He's even more cynical than me now.
Yeah.
And I'm pretty cynical.
This guy
man, I need to watch this again. I have it.
I mean, the Earth by the time he left must have been horrible because he just wanted to get the hell out of Dodge.
Yeah.
He was willing to go into space, and who knows for where, just to get away from all of these people.
The funniest part of that, I thought the funniest plot hole is that's supposed to be a colonization mission, and they go up with 3 men and 1 woman, and the woman dies.
Well, didn't think that one out.
Good thing
we'll get to the fertility thing later. That's a big theme. Justin, you have any final thoughts on those Apes movies?
I was just going to say it was quite ironic that Charlton Heston, given we know, head of the NRA, I think, before he passed away, and his views on guns, and yet he was in a fairly peacenik type film, or a film with an anti-nuclear bomb theme in it, as well as, of course, the Planet of the Apes, but that carried on the anti-nuclear message in terms of, and it sort of freaked me out as a child when I saw the film that you had these.
Yeah, in a Tim Burton film, he parodied himself.
Yeah.
You had these people with masks on, and when they took the masks off, they'd been mutated by nuclear radiation. So that was a good film. I've seen the latest version, the latest Planet of the Apes films that have been out in the last 10 years. I think they're so-so, they're without being anything spectacular. I've seen a couple of those films, and I did see of the others.
Technical difficulties.
Conquest of the Planet of the Apes, was that the one that was set in New York?
Yes.
We already talked about that one.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I did like that one. If for no other reason, the early '70s architecture at the start of the film I thought was pretty cool, and it was good
And it
that
was
it
supposed
was.
to be mildly futuristic, so they just showed the
Mhm.
buildings that were brand new with the most cutting edge
Yeah,
architecture.
Right.
yeah, that's right. Yeah, so
They didn't make
it was
anything. They just they're just like, let's go to LA
Yeah.
and look at some really trippy buildings they just put up,
In Heston's defense, maybe if it hadn't been for all those gun control laws, maybe the apes wouldn't have had such an easy time taking over.
That's true.
That's right.
True.
Just throwing that
Um,
out there.
Yeah. Yeah.
There's layers to that. I just want to say real quick, we should move on to another area. Justin, do you have something you want to say?
Oh, and then just also kudos to Heston for some of his one-liners, his dry one-liners in the original film. I thought were quite good.
Yeah.
When he
Yeah.
was commented for, a human can actually be faithful to one partner, and his reply was, "Well, trust me, on this planet it's easy."
Yeah,
Right, exactly.
that's true.
Well, and
so I
we
had
should-
some lines like that.
Before we move on to his next one, we should give a big shout out to James Franciscus for doing a Charlton Heston impression.
Yeah, he was
I
great.
like him in that.
And that was
I like
funny
him.
because they were on a rescue mission. Like, why?
Like, if you didn't really pay close attention, you probably wouldn't have even realized it was a different guy.
Mhm.
Yeah, and the
Yeah.
thing is,
it was-
in that movie, it was like a rescue mission, but really I thought it was more of like, well, we can't do anything else. Let's just send one more ship out and see
Sure.
if something happens. And, they probably didn't expect him to return. Of course, he did not return. But neither did Taylor. Go ahead, Justin. Do you have any final thoughts on this incredible series?
No, that's pretty much it. So yeah, I
Cool.
thought it was a great series, and the
Thank you.
latest versions of it have been,